What if the reason you're not calling in the abundance and wealth that you want is not just about limiting beliefs? What if it is tied to an energetic survival mechanism that's actually older than capitalism itself? In this video, I'm going to talk about a collective imprint that makes abundance feel dangerous and that encourages us to play small. So stay tuned because I'll help you explore how this might be alive for you right now and how you can start to dissolve it to call more wealth and abundance into your life. If you've seen my video about clearing ancestral wealth blocks, you know that my relationship to money shifted dramatically when I realized that my money blocks were not just operating at the level of the mind. When I realized these can be associated with ancestral patterns, karmic imprints, the collective psyche, things started to shift, not only for me, but also for the people that I came into contact with. So today I want to talk about a collective imprint that I believe can impact our ability to command abundance. This is sometimes known as the witch wound or the persecution imprint. So imagine living in a world where you could actually be killed for your gifts, because that is what thousands of people experienced when they were accused of witchcraft or sorcery of some kind in the past. Kimberly Jones, who is an authority on this subject, writes that the witch wound is a past life scar, an ancestral wound and a collective trauma, a deep cellular memory carried down through generations and perpetuated in our patriarchal society. One of the most prominent examples is the European witch trials. Sometimes this period is referred to as the burning times because so many people were killed by being burned. Under Scotland's Witchcraft Act of 1563, about 4,000 people were accused of witchcraft, and that law was not repealed until almost 200 years later. The thing was, you didn't have to be what we might understand as a witch to be accused of witchcraft in those times. You could be accused for all sorts of things. Being a midwife, being a herbalist, using any kind of alternative healing method, being creative, expressing sexuality. People were accused of being witches for being argumentative. Also sometimes having a certain birthmark or mole. And some people say that people with red hair were often accused of witches as well. This was sometimes simply used as a way to exert control over other people. There are accounts of bitter neighbours who were jealous of a woman having inherited land, accusing her of being a witch. And this was very much about power, even more than it was about religion or spirituality. This was about a form of patriarchal control that wanted to suppress the divine feminine, the indigenous knowledge, and the wisdom that we actually sense it is time to reclaim today. And speaking of indigenous wisdom, it was not just in Europe. There were the Salem witch trials, and there's also the example of the Laker people who were persecuted and tortured by the Spanish conquistadors during that time as well. So this is a global phenomenon of persecution that we are holding somewhere deeply within our collective DNA, within the memory of our past. I'm not going to go into a lot of the detail about the ways in which people accused of witchcraft were treated, because honestly it is really pretty sickening. And I know that if you are called to dig into this more deeply, if you feel ready to confront some of those details, you will do that for yourself. You'll go into your own research. But the reason I really wanted to talk about this today is because I do think that there are ways in which this collective memory can prevent us from showing up in our full expression, from speaking up, from standing out, and therefore from calling in the abundance and the wealth that we want to create through our gifts as healers, as intuitives, as leaders, as spiritual entrepreneurs, or as whoever we want to be in this time now. So how does this imprint show up today? We know that trauma doesn't just disappear. It can pass through generations. It can alter our DNA. There are more and more studies showing that, and more people who are deeply engaged in healing ancestral and collective trauma. So this kind of imprint can show up as a fear of wanting to stand out, a fear of wanting to speak the truth of your inner gifts for fear of persecution, a fear of anything within you that seems to deviate from the norm. You know, we think that we're afraid of not being enough, but that truism from Marianne Williamson is such an important guide. Sometimes we are actually afraid of our own power. We might be terrified of sharing our uniqueness, right? Because in the past, whether we experience that directly or not, you could be ostracized, punished, tortured, or killed as a result of having something about you that was deemed to be different, to be unique, to deviate from the norm. There can also be a fear of betrayal. You know, it's said that in the times of the witch trials, sometimes close ones would betray you because they were trying to save themselves, or perhaps they were trying to save another family member. So there can be a lack of trust in others as part of this imprint. And of course, there can be a deep lack of trust of yourself, because when there's so much baggage associated with inner gifts, it can hamper our ability to really connect with that dimension of ourselves. This was very much about severing our connection to nature, to indigenous wisdom, to the wisdom of the plant kingdom, and so on. When we feel disconnected from nature, when we feel disconnected from that medicine that we sense is somewhere buried deep within, it can be connected to this persecution imprint. Even people pleasing can be associated with this imprint, because not wanting to rock the boat, wanting to stay quiet, not wanting to cause any trouble is another dimension of how this can be expressed. Do any of these resonate with you? Do you play down your abilities? Do you undercharge for what you're worth? Do you hesitate to express your ideas? Is anything starting to stir in your inner knowing as you hear these words? And if so, then remember, the best way to meet the surfacing of these wounds is with love and compassion. When you have more awareness about what's really going on underneath the surface at this deep level, then you can start to address it. You can be the one that interrupts the pattern. You can be the one that starts to send healing backwards and forwards in time, in accordance with the highest good of all. So what's all of this got to do with money and abundance? Well, for anybody who wants to call in more wealth and abundance through channeling their gifts, through being a light worker of some kind, through healing others, through leading others, through speaking truth to power, then the idea that too much invites hostility, punishment, and death can obviously be a really big deal. Edward Mannix, who is the creator of the Compassion Key, talks a lot about the persecution imprint and offers some really, really helpful clearings around this. And he just points out that a lot of people who see themselves as light workers or healers feel that they have already been here before, right? They've experienced incarnations in which some of these things may have happened to them or to a loved one. And he also says that even if you don't have that particular imprint, when you step into the community of healers, of light workers, you may sense it anyway. as part of the collective consciousness. Do I believe that I was a witch in a past life? Well, I'm open to that possibility. And for me, it's actually more about whether this archetypal story can help me understand something about myself and something about the ways in which I might be holding myself back in this lifetime. And the answer to that is definitely yes. I have explored my own experiences through, past life regression or meditations and things like that. And I'm still curious about what's really going on when we enter those realms. But for me, it's not necessarily so much about proving things one way or the other. It's about what our explorations can help unlock. And there are definitely certain things that I see in myself that make much more sense through this lens. So, let's say that this imprint is running somehow either at a soul level for you or as part of your sensitivity to a collective energy, then yes, it can stop you from showing up in a way that will magnetize wealth. Maybe it expresses as you undervaluing your work. Maybe you feel terrified to claim your identity as somebody that can call in a high ticket offer. Maybe it expresses itself as a terrible fear of rejection by potential clients. Maybe it expresses as just an inability to get behind marketing your own products or services for fear of ostracization, for fear of shining too brightly, for fear of being cast out of the group, for fear of being criticized, or whatever it is for you that feels so sticky around expression and being visible in the limelight. Another big part of this is the disconnection it can cause between ourselves and our own intuitive gifts. That severing can block abundance and wealth, can't it? As a spiritual entrepreneur, as somebody who wants to be in this incredible exchange, a flow of value, of a tapping into feminine energy, disconnection from intuition, disconnection from our own sacred bodily processes can really dampen down our ability to call that wealth in, right? If we are too much in that patriarchal, logical, masculine energy of being attached to metrics, of feeling like we need to rationalize everything in that way, are we going to be able to show up exactly as the healers, the business women and people that we really want to be? Are we going to be able to call in the clients, to hold that energy, to do what we want to do, to create what we want to create? If we're disconnected from nature, if we haven't grounded, if we haven't understood ourselves deeply as expressions of the natural world, which is already so inherently abundant, which already has so much to teach us, which has so much available to protect us and guide us on our journey. In a previous chapter of my life, I did have the opportunity to do a lot of public speaking. I was a kind of a creative activist, and I was traveling around the world teaching people how to create technology that was more gender inclusive. It was part of a movement called Feminist Internet. And I had the honor of being invited to do a TEDx talk in Barcelona. And I prepared so diligently for this talk. And I stepped out and I shared the message about creating a feminist internet. And in the moment, it was a wonderful experience. There was rapturous applause. My friend was crying in the audience. It felt really good. But afterwards, there was so much rumination. There was so much self-criticism. I couldn't bear to watch the video back. And it disadvantaged me because other people that I knew who were in my field at the time that were doing similar kinds of presentations would shout about them. They'd share them all over social media. They would use them to amplify their message, to get more work, to increase their social standing and all of that kind of thing. And I just wanted to hide it away. I didn't want anyone to see it. I almost considered contacting the event organizers and pleading with them to take it off YouTube because I felt so much shame. I felt so much unhealed trauma triggered because, of course, that kind of talk gets lots of criticism. And at that time, I was not equipped to deal with what would come up for me as a result of standing out and sharing a controversial message with the world. Now, at that time, I had no language like this. I had no awareness of anything, in the realm of a persecution imprint. But when I look back now, through this lens, I can see, wow, yeah, maybe a lot was coming up around it's not safe to stand up and be in this exposure. Maybe it's not safe to speak what feels like something that needs to be said to power, and who knows? Was it the witch wound? Was it the persecution imprint? I don't know, but there's something about the healing that comes when we explore that possibility and give ourselves the grace to contend with what we've experienced on that level as well. A couple of caveats. This is definitely not about ignoring issues of shame or self-worth or fear of speaking out that you've picked up in this lifetime. If you've watched some of my videos before, you know that to me, healing is about kind of moving up and down this ladder from the karmic imprint level through the energy body, through the subconscious and into the conscious mind. We get to dance up and down these things as is needed, right? Sometimes it might need to be just a simple mental reframe, but sometimes it might need to be deeper work. And that's the beauty of having lots of different tools in our toolkit and different levels that we can work on. So it's not one thing at the expense of the other. The other thing is, I'm not saying go out there, expose yourself in a way that's going to traumatize you, take any old risk, because the fact is there might be some situations that you don't feel safe yet to speak up in, and that's okay. We want to dissolve shame about what we are and aren't willing to do. This is your journey. This is your energy body. This is your ancestral exploration. So you find your own way. Sometimes there are going to be edges that you can, push beyond, and sometimes something might come to light that's just an opportunity for healing, and that's where the compassion comes in, that's when the energy work comes in, that's where you give yourself space and time to heal. So how can you start to dissolve the persecution imprint if it's something that's impacting you? It may well be something you want to do with a guide, with a healer, with a therapist, a coach. As I've mentioned, Edward Mannix does do a lot of free clearings around this in I think it's the Compassion Key Quick Start Guide, so you could check that out. If you want to work with me one-to-one, then I do offer conscious coaching that is very sensitive to these kinds of energetic imprints. And if that's something you're curious about, I'll leave a link in the description below where you can apply to work one-on-one with me. Some things you can start to do gently for yourself now in the meantime. The first thing is obviously awareness. As soon as you start to become aware of and explore these things, something shifts in and of itself. So that's really huge as a first step. And be kind to yourself as you explore this. If you're curious, if you start doing the research, just take it easy, okay? Because there are graphic stories, there are things that are very difficult to read in this context. So what I do is I go in, I do a little bit, and then if it feels too much, I step out, I come back to it at a later time. Sometimes, if I've been listening to an audiobook that's about this, I'll just pause it. I might even skip a section if it's going into a lot of description that's feeling really, really difficult to tolerate. So compassion, love, self-care, super, super important. Then I know it sounds so obvious, but consciously reconnecting to nature is so, so powerful, because remember, a big part of this systemic oppression was severing our relationship to nature and to what is within us. So reclaiming our sovereignty and reclaiming that connection is a really big part of the healing journey. So whatever it is that you like to do, it could be tending to a houseplant. It could be the classic, take your shoes and socks off and feel your feet on the ground. It could be connecting with a tree. It could be going and splashing your face in water from a stream. Whatever it is, anything that can remind you of who you really are, part of the Divine Mother, part of this incredible being who is so abundant already, will help you to start dissolving this imprint. Then gently start tapping in more strongly with your inner guidance and your intuition. You want to cultivate these so they start becoming more and more a part of your life and a part of the way that you're showing up and expressing yourself and creating your business, if that's what you're doing. You want to build those up and not let them be diminished in favor of that logical, analytical, masculine structure that can really start to take over when we are severed from our connection to ourselves. And if you want to have a guided meditation that really helps you with deep self-trust, then check out this video here. You can also explore some of the fears that are coming up. Perhaps this isn't something you've looked at in a lot of depth so far. So, you could do that through journaling. Maybe if some of the things that I described earlier in the video stood out, you could pick one and really explore whether you sense that this could be connected to the persecution imprint. And again, give yourself time, give yourself space, give yourself grace. This can be something helpful to feed into a coaching relationship or a healing relationship if that's what you want to do as well. And then finally, it can always be helpful to connect with other people who are on a similar path to you. When you feel alienated, when you feel isolated, when you feel like the things that you say are being perceived as crazy by people in your life, it can feel difficult, right? It can feel difficult to normalize the things that you're doing. So I would really recommend reaching out to like-minded souls, allowing yourself to be in a space where people are going to tell you, no, I don't think that that's bonkers. It's really healing. It's really wonderful. So that could be another way to move past this imprint as well. So I'm very curious to know, is this something that you have explored in the past? Have you healed the persecution imprint? Is it something that might unlock a new wave of abundance for you? Please do let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video.